question is about me and Yarrow. We were exposed to COVID last Tuesday.
Okay.
We got the sniffles. I got the sniffles, sore throat. The other people who started that way ended up in full-blown COVID. I gargled with bay laurel. I put bay laurel in
Okay.
jojoba, put it on my feet every night and every day in socks, and
Hmm.
took black cumin seed and seed oil and was there some there's a C and zinc, and I took a homeopathic, and it didn't go into my respiratory.
Did
It
you
did
test
not.
positive or?
I never tested positive, but I never have. But I had intuitive say, yes, you do have COVID, and
Yeah, and that's the issue with some of the variants that even though you might test negative and you're showing symptoms, like the variants, I don't think always show up in the test. And so, I mean, it's hard to say, but even, I mean, here's the thing too, is there's also other things other than COVID floating around. We just don't think about it too much because COVID's the scary one. But
yeah. But the people I was with that I got it from all
uh,
have full-blown COVID. So I'm
okay,
I'm pretty confident about that I
right.
staved off a piece of it, but I'm both Yara and I are exhausted.
Yeah,
So
you probably got it. Yeah.
we didn't get the
Yeah.
lung thing, but the exhaustion and the
Yeah.
it's kind of a lack of motivation. Like I haven't
Yeah,
worked since
it it
Thursday.
it, it passes, but like so, like again, you could do a little bit of sage on your body, like how we were talking, because that is kind of fortifying. But I would probably go like I don't know if you have some form of thyme.
I do.
Even Ravensara can be helpful here. The thyme, again helps the body fight off any sort of viruses and things, but it also is strengthening to the body. And Ravensara is also antiviral and can be a little bit strengthening to the body. The bay laurel is super good thing to do. I don't know if you have Monarda, but if
I
you
do.
don't, I mean, you're already several days into it. If you had Monarda, I'd say like be doing Monarda every day, but you're already using something that's antiviral. And so I would get probably a little extra rest for a little bit just to make sure that you don't put your body in a stressed state. But just do some things that are fortifying to the body, without generating a lot of heat. Like even a few drops of thyme, even though some of the times can be a little bit hot, they're not like crazy hot. And so should be supportive enough. And I mean, keep putting a lot of bay laurel on and anything else that you have that's antiviral. Eucalyptus radiata would be first choice in the eucalyptuses, but polybroct or globulus, any of them would be still helpful, including even the ones that are lemon, have a little bit of a lemony scent. All of them are pretty antiviral, even tea tree. Most oils are at least a little bit antiviral, but some are just they shine. And so just stay in that realm and uh, something to increase energy levels. So Ravensara, thyme. um,
So one of the symptoms I have is happening right now. It's like I don't know if it's just like it's very hot here, so that is happening. But I just like pure sweat. I just like it's like a hot flash, but I don't think uh it's not like I don't think it's a regular kind of hot flash. It's just like a detoxifying kind of. I just
you just got hot. Did you turn red or you just got hot?
It's just hot, just like
And are you
burn
sweating at all? Like are you sweating on your
pure. Yes,
forehead,
total sweat, wet.
all over your body, or just your
Yeah,
forehead,
all
your
over my
abdomen,
body,
all
all over
over?
my body.
Yeah, well, it could be your body's trying to process the virus. So
Like
it's
dripping,
a
like dripping
little bit
wet.
of a weird thing, but like you could go two ways. You could use things to try to reduce the fever, or sometimes like it, or I don't know that you even have a fever, but you're sweating.
Mhm.
And sometimes people will do, like in certain cultures, they'll do the opposite where they go and even though you're hot, you go get under some blankets and just really harness the heat to do it, as long as the fever is not very high. I tend to want to do things just to cut the fever. Like, so if I look that up, let me just look that up real quick.
I've taken my temperature. I don't have a temperature.
You don't have a fever.
Mm-mm.
Do the sage. Like the sage
Okay.
should be helpful for that.
Okay.
Sage, and then if sage doesn't work, I mean, here would be another one that's a little bit of a sleeper in this situation is cypress. And cypress will help us when there's like excessive sweating. Cypress is very good for detoxification. And, there's some weird variations that can happen down in the lungs and the chest. And, especially when the lining of the lungs gets a little bit irritated. You'd kind of notice because like your chest would feel kind of tight. It doesn't mean that that's exactly what it is, because there's a lot of things that can make that happen, but cypress is one of the ways to kind of offset that. And then the other thing is cypress will actually jumpstart some of the glands. The other thing that you could do if you just wanted to jumpstart all the glands is like frankincense or myrrh, or frankincense and myrrh together, like 3 wise men blend, something like that. Put it on your skin, even a couple of drops internally, and jumpstarts the glands. And the glands are one thing that we really don't think about a whole lot when it comes to like illness, like things like this. But basically, your body's ability to fend off a virus in the early stages is the immune system. But once it's really got in and starts going through, trashing the hotel room is what I like to say with a virus. It starts trashing the hotel room. Then you're looking at neurological things that, are potentially a neurological response or an endocrine response. And part of what can help us get sick easier or to be able to fight it off sometimes is also the health of the glands. I mean, it's one of the things that if you have low glandular activity or low hormones, especially certain ones, when you're not sick and you get exposed to something, that's part of how you end up getting sick. And so I always like to throw a little action into the glands, and so you could do that as well. Yeah,
All right. Great.
yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much. And
And
just
and feel free to email us about the person. Just get like maybe a little bit more details about the singer,
okay.
and I'm sure we can find something for the
Okay.
person. It's just yeah.
I do want to say just from last weekend's class, it feels like it's like starting to drop in what all this is about. I'm starting to get it. It's
Well,
starting to make sense in
I
a
good. I love that. And one of the things is a little bit later in the year, we're going to be pulling different pieces from different classes and even taking like another level or another step with everything. Like you said, you can kind of see things coming together, but we're going to be using them as like building blocks. So we're going to be doing some different kinds of classes towards the end of the year where it's more like integrative with some of the things we've already learned from different classes. And that was a little bit of the difficult approach with like approaching psychological things and psychological issues is there is that it's not even that they're intertwined or connected, they're just different parts of the spectrum where it's your physiology, your emotions, your mind, all these things are just sliding back and forth. And it's hard just to address it with like a symptom oriented approach. I mean, you can do it for some things, but for some of these things, it's almost like mm, you just got to go kind of like how I was saying, it's almost like setting the altar ready for your meditation or your prayer work or something. You just got to get the area prepped for it, and then you can do what you're going to do. And we laid the foundation, and now we're getting to the point where we're setting up the altar so that you can just get in and do some very specific things. And each part of the nervous system does like different things to us psychologically. And like once you really kind of unwind some conditioning and start focusing on the nervous system, uh, you can make big psychological shifts by treating neurological, it's neurological, it's a little bit of endocrine function, but you can make big shifts by working the neurology a little bit.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I also have the thought if I take the COVID story off of this,
Hmm.
that this is like there is a shift afoot where the pusher is disabled and the
Hmm. Yeah,
exhaustion
yeah.
is a welcome relief before the next foundation
Hmm.
is established, that as long as I'm in that pusher mode, I can't, step up to that altar in a clear way.
Right.
And that something is being cleared to enable that shift.
Yeah. I mean, when I first started doing this work way back when, I was doing all kinds of things to try to like quiet my mind or organize my mind, and not only did none of it work, a lot of it made it worse. Like honestly, it just did. And I wasn't always doing, um, you know, systems or practices. I was just trying to figure things out on my own, and making lots of mistakes. And when I started working with the neurology, your nervous system neurology, um, it was interesting because it was more for pain management at first. It wasn't really about psychological things, but as I went through and started treating it, because I had bad injuries that involved the spine and torn muscles and things. And as I started going through and calming them down, I started laughing to myself, like kind of how I'm laughing now. I was like, wait a minute. When I start treating the nervous system, my mind gets quiet. Like, how weird is that? And then I kept just going down that rabbit hole. And then I started seeking out teachers that would teach me about that. And the issue is that a lot of times we use different terminologies to talk about this phenomenon. We will point with different fingers from different cultures and different healing practices and even spiritual practices. But when you boil it down and you start looking at it, if you think about the way yin yang plays out, we don't go into it a whole lot of depth, but for so much time when you're looking at this issue, like even when you look at it like intellectually, you see, oh, there is essence and form, and there's this play between essence and form. But if you really look at it from the point of view of like a therapist or a scientist or something, and you watch the play between the two, like at first, what happens is we're so ingrained in the form that we keep trying to bring light in to like untangle ourselves a little bit, you could say. Like, you're trying to dislodge this consciousness or conscious awareness in the form of the body, of your neurology, of your physiological responses, and also the mind, the viewpoint, the repetitive thoughts, all these things. And then at some point, it actually flips to where you're really starting to be more of essence, and it's always going back and forth, essence and form, essence and form. And what happens is when we start to experience greater levels of essence, as we experience that greater level of essence, it always produces the opposite, right? So we end up going back into the form, and in that point we realize the impurities that are in the form, right? And so then we become self-conscious as we become closer to the divinity of like, I have these shortcomings, I have these things, I have these ways of thinking, I have, whatever it is, because you've experienced more purity and light. So then when you come back into the form, you go, and a lot of times the more the experience, almost the harsher the rebound. And if you're a good like Boy Scout or Girl Scout, with how to address these things. When you come back and you go, oh, there's some impurities, you go, that's okay. I'm going to mop this up and I'm going to do it again, right? But when we don't know, you have that experience and then you bounce back and it's just upsetting or entangling, or you had an experience and then it kind of goes away. And so the idea is to almost become like a good scout, so that when the light comes back into the essence, you can just go, oh, look, a deeper layer of purifying the form is in. So all of this breaks our patterns. All of this is like a way of paying off your karma or diminishing your karma. It's really more like breaking karmic patterns, but um, it's an interesting little bounce back and forth. And so like, you know, some of those practices where they do fire practices or they do things with like the sun or something like that, it's actually tied to this mechanism that we're talking about. And so we're doing it in a way that's a little bit more clinical and therapeutics, you could say, but there is this like kind of emergence that we're kind of working towards here over the next few months. And things are going to be pulled together in ways where things we've been doing for a while are going to all start making sense. Like it's starting to like drop into place where this is why we work the vital centers. This is why we work the blood. This is why we did the brain waves. This is why we did, you know, and at first we just had to play with them all independently, but now we're starting to go, okay, we have the building blocks, take the building blocks and let's get down to business. You know, it's like the foundation had to be laid before the deeper things started happening, so to speak.
So cool.
Yeah.
So very cool. Thank you so much, Greg.
You're so welcome. And boy, you sound like your sister.